Hey everyone, it's Will, GamerDad, with another video for you. So in today's video, we're actually going to discuss a banner that's coming up in a couple of days from now. Now, if you haven't caught the live stream, make sure you watch the replay on the Another Eden official channel, aka Scott, our manager for Global. And in there, they did mention that there's going to be a Star Dream dropping a couple of days now with the new update. So in this video, of course, we'll cover my thoughts and opinions about who to select with your Star Dream, given that it should be up to date as of Thursday in my town about 2 days from now. Obviously, if you're in a different time zone, that'll be a little bit longer, 2 to 3 days depending. And so, hopefully this will give you some indication of who I think are worth going for, who I think are decent, and of course, who you should probably try to avoid. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. I also do have a Patreon account for those who want to support me that way. So, I know that this screen does not show the Star Dream, unfortunately. I mean, it hasn't come out for a couple of days, but I do think I have a lot of content to cover in the next, when the update actually drops. And so I want this ahead of time so you can plan accordingly. Keep in mind that Star Dreams, when it does come out, you usually have about a month to pull for them. And then, from then, when you activate that banner on the last couple of days, hopefully, then you'll have an additional, 30 days to kind of use your Star Dream selector to pick the 5-star of your choice. So a lot of times people wait till the end unless you really can't help it. And keep in mind that you want to wait to then just in case you pull on future banners and you off banner one of the targets you wanted so you don't waste the Star Dream on units you already have. Now, in terms of the criteria that we have here for Star Dream, it is very similar to those in the past. We are trying to summon or pull for longevity. So hopefully the units that you are targeting will be useful for at least 6 to 12 months or longer. The unit should be useful in all areas and length of the game, from day one players, as in, if you're new to the game and you just started last week, to people like me who are in the late end game. Now, as one aspect, I have previously put some value into farming units with 0 MP cost and things like that. However, I'm going to mention right now that I don't consider those nearly as valuable as in that one aspect, only because really most powerful DPS, even without Grasta at the early stages, can probably clear any mobs you really need. And if you're having trouble, you can either use VCs to clear it. There are free units that can do so. And later on, once you get Grasta, it should be absolutely no issue moving forward. Also, back to remembering the criteria that we go by, not only is it useful in all parts of the game, you want to really have value in taking on super boss fights and an emphasis on units that can be used for low turn, elegant clears, as opposed to some of the older clears that you can kind of do with any old units. Nowadays we really try to promote powerful units that can get things done much more quickly for you. And finally, as an aside, we obviously do consider things like game-breaking mechanics, scam units. You've heard me use that term before. And note that you do have to be okay with the level of scam. That is, some units you may think, oh, that's too cheap. I would never use that unit. Or, wow, what a scam. If the unit is one of those units that you find too powerful, as in you're cheating almost, then of course you will not use your Star Dream on those, although everyone has their own criteria and their own kind of moral code, so to speak, as to which units are considered fair and which units are not considered fair. So that being said, this list will ignore that and just judge the unit or units based on overall use and power in the game. One other thing to note is that this list has changed dramatically from the previous Star Dream advice video. And the reason for that is, since then to now, the meta for the game has changed quite a bit. If you've noticed or tackled some of the newest super bosses in the game, either the Apocrypha ones or even some of the story units, man, some of the older picks just aren't considered number one picks at this point in time, even though they're still useful. Because the meta has also concentrated on things like survival, you require a heavy debuff such as 50-50-50, you'll probably need super tanks and other ultra buffing units in order to get by. You also need things like heavy ways to debuff the enemy either through physical or type resistance. Anyways, in terms of this list, how I would like to say we draft the unit is based on the overall recommendations. These are based on my playstyle and my own personal views, of course, and so you may have a slightly different idea of who you want to go for, and that's okay. I'm just sharing my thoughts as Gamer Dad with my experience, and of course my friend has also put in his opinion in this guide as well, so to speak. So again, your draft board might be a little bit different, however, it's just my opinion. So, okay, so of course, let's go with the number one pick. And the number one pick goes to, of course, my waifu Suzette. I mean, Suzette is WFS's love child. What's not to like? You've got, preemptive pierce attack that also powers down. Inflicts mega poison and pain, of course. You've got some high level wind DPS, and it guarantees crit, so you don't need a crit setter. I mean, not only that, she's hot, and last thing, she is the Dark Princess of the Netherworld. So, definitely, 10 out of 10, must pick her. Okay, seriously. All jokes aside, that is not my pick. Obviously, we are going with a different line for that. And you should know where number one is coming from. Number one on both my friend and my draft list for the Star Drain would be Iphi. Iphi is broken as heck. She is the only zone setter for Shade, and you can do it with the move. Not only that move, of course, gives mental focus and so on and so forth. But what is ridiculous about it is the fact that she gives blood contract either at the start of battle with everyone in the front line, or you can reapply it as long as there's no blood contract active. And what blood contract is, essentially all your units not only get abilities to tank hits for your entire party, it also continuously activates Lunatic Risk Taker, which saves your other units from having to activate their own Lunatic. It's always in play, and the Risk Taker does a ton extra damage at the cost of 20% self damage. You also have debuffs such as Rosa Liliac, which is broken as heck as well, 35, 35, 35, and eventually gets to 50, 50, 50 if you have 3 stacks from her blood contract kind of getting eaten up as the fight goes on. She also has things like Cyclone, which is kickback immunity, that is from her boost move, which is Nocturnal Procession, and she has some DPS capabilities in Icrophilia. So, don't forget, that's also the fact that we don't even have her with a buddy. Now, she has a bat or a coffin behind her. Maybe in the future, WFS will add a sidekick for her. One other thing to note, not only is Iphi good in any stage of the game, she is useful as a support or primary DPS even, or secondary DPS for boss fighting. She can dual debuff. She can obviously even make a lesser team help to get through early, mid, and end game content, storyline, even mob killing, and so on and so forth. Very, very powerful. So anyways, hopefully that gives you an idea of what my friend and I both consider our consensus number one pick. All right, how about picks 2 to 5? This one's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to pair them because picks 2 to 5 are considered in my mind and also in my friend's mind. Depending on how your playstyle is, you will want either one pair or the other or both. Okay. So my first pair, as in either 2, 3 or 4, 5 in terms of numbers in picking, are Yakumo and Minalca, and AS Radius and AS Asifa. So I'll cover the two units here first, and I'll go into AS Radius and AS Asifa. Hopefully you like the new kind of format. I know a lot of you have asked for screenshots of the units and kind of see what they are like and what they do. It might be a little bit slower for me to scroll through it, but I hope that you appreciate that and it does help you. Okay, so why Yakumo and Minalca? You gotta remember, we are gonna pull for the buddy. Each of these units, if you do get them, regardless of if you get them as a 4.5 or 5 star, by the time you side grade it to a 5 star, you get the buddy for free or the sidekick for free. And therefore, just on that merit alone, you're essentially getting a 2-for-1 summon. So in terms of sidekicks, you know that Tetra and Kumos are extremely broken. Just as a reminder, Tetra essentially has, okay, I mean, it does some attacking and it can restore all statuses and heal, which you've seen all the time. That's its auto move. It's got a charge shield that basically brings everyone back to life and gives hold ground. And the aura is ridiculous too. As soon as an enemy, our target of yours, like yourself, is 80% or below, which is perfect with Risk Taker or with Minalca's self-damage, it increases max HP and MP by 25%, and why not? Physical and magic resistance 30. So this is why using Tetra in your team will help you survive by not only having healing, mitigation, shielding, auto heal, and revive. Kumos, on the other hand, is a lot more offensive. Auto move, speed, shade resistance down, 3 turns stackable up to 45%, gives everyone an MP restore for every turn, 10 or 20 depending on who it is, and it charges much faster in magic and shade zone, and it can, with his charge move, can give 50-50 power int until turn end, and grant Yakumo 100% full heal, and activate Lunatic and Menace mode, which means for 1 turn he can do unlimited attacks with this, that doesn't drain MP. And don't forget the aura. Magic resist 20 and damage down 30. So you're debuffing the enemy and debuffing the enemy, ridiculous as such. Okay, so back to each of those units. So first of all, you do get the 2-for-1. And for those who haven't seen my 5-star reviews of most of these units, check out my 5-star review playlist on my channel. Yakumo, what is there to say? Broken as heck. All these are broken, by the way. So, I mean, what else do you need to know? The main moves you really need to know are the 3 listed here. You're going to use Karma, which is int and speed 50%. And not only that, gives mental focus. And not only that, converts HP into MP, which helps charge up his massive attack. You can also set up with the 1 turn with the Retribution, which is Shade Resist 50 for 5, increase Shade Attack for himself for 5, and restore HP. And during Lunatic, and that counts with Blood Contract, by the way, which works really well with Iphi, is 100-100. So 100% Shade Resist down, 100% Shade Damage up. And then you're just going to delete the enemy. We already know how deletion does. Cap damage, eats up almost all his MP, but blows everyone away as long as they're vulnerable to shade. And if they're not vulnerable to shade and they resist shade, you can alter Shion that and change it. If they null shade or null magic, well, then you're out of luck. But there's only a few units, enemies to do that. Other than that, he just walks right through everything. Keep in mind, shade damage is not resisted in the early, mid, and early end game as well. That lunar elements such as shade, thunder, and Crystal weren't introduced until only when Clark was out. So a while ago, 1.5 years, maybe 2 years. And as a result, all early content, including things like dual Hachios, are not resistant. So you can use Yakumo and Iphi alone, if not with others, to kind of win some of those earlier fights that you may have trouble with. And he is a one-man wrecking show, as you can see. Okay, on the other hand, it's not like Minalca's not a one-person wrecking crew. What she lacks in, shall I even mention lacking in damage? She's not really even lacking in damage. She does self-damage herself and everyone at the beginning of every turn, and depending on how much she damages, she can do a massive amount of damage. But what we really want her for is rip and tear. Barrier pierced units. There's only a few in the game, and she's one of them. Fire Slash is very easy to have lots of synergies with either free or gacha units, and Fire alone as an element is very powerful. You have a lot of access to a lot of different units to buff and debuff. You have things like Ultra Sakia, Kid if you want to use free teams, and Aisha. There's lots of ways to manipulate Fire to do what you want. Anyways, Barrier Pierce, Elemental Break Fire, Pain, and they can attack twice as long as the enemy is 50% or more. Again, you do have the requirement of self-damaging your party in front, and to be fair, you do need a 20k HP total between the front four in order to maximize the stacks of 50. However, you can easily get that with some of the newest HP Grasta, which you either, I think I use half MP or, half this or half that. They're very, very easy. You've seen some of my clears using that. Now, if Rip and Tear is not good enough for you, you still have Damnatio, which shreds through everything and has a very respectable damage modifier. And finally, you can boost her in multiple ways. There are different ways to do so, but I use Annihilator, increase user's max HP, and then, blah, 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 blah. So that way, you'll bring your party above the 20k minimum requirement. So to summarize, these two units are top line DPSs in their respective fields. They come with a buddy, so right away they are very highly sought after. If you don't even use a unit, everyone uses sidekicks. And the two we mentioned, Kumos and Tetra, are the best in this class right now. We don't have anything comparable to it. I mean, the future may come where there are more powerful ones, but for now, they are unmatched in both their respective fields. Okay, so if you don't like 2-3, how about 4-5? And keep in mind, we're going by pairs, so whether or not you want this pair, you can also think of the other pair. And the reason why I pair them is because they have a lot of similarities, and they're also used on the same team. In this case, these two units are paired because of the sidekicks. But what if I told you there are other units that are freaking broken as well, and you know who I'm talking about? Yep, that's right. That is right. I know I haven't showed everyone some of my side grades. I will show that probably when I do my account review. I've been slowly upgrading some of the units. But you should recognize these two units by now as, again, either a 4-5 or a 2-3. Somewhere mixed. I would consider all four of these units, by the way, the two Minalca and Yakumo, as well as Asifa, AS Radius, both equivalent in power, just different uses. And obviously, you really decide what is your preference or priority for those. So when I say 4-5, it could easily be 2-3, no particular order. One is not any better than the other. They all are used in different ways. Okay, I don't even use Iphi, okay? And I know that Iphi and Radius are part of the one team, and I know they're broken as heck, not because I know anything, but because I recognize the fact that they can still do boosts, but mainly they have their 5-star AS boost. This is, you're supposed to give faith to a unit of your choice using AS Iphi at the start of battle. Now note, this is from non-AS strats. So turn 1, you'll give faith to your DPS of choice. And then you will boost the DPS of choice with most likely, but not Bua, I guess. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Which gives strength, 50, crit, all those other things. Boosted maximum damage. Or this one, which is the, shielding. And those are the ones that essentially help you win the game. I would say the Banat Bua is probably more important because it gives increased stat to the, I guess when you bless it, you're supposed to get, it gives increased stat based on her spirit divided by 2 or something like that. So it's really, really, really powerful. Okay, so she alone basically can boost a unit, and this is again, let's see. There's one faith. You can only faith one person. But yeah, she is able to bless the unit, and then just even a mid-line DPS unit can become a top-tier DPS. Again, I don't use her. I haven't used her yet. But if you watch a lot of other videos out there on YouTube, you'll know how powerful she is for helping kill current content. Not only that, she does have kickback immunity that she can apply to your team as well. So she is one of the premier support units in the game. She essentially has no DPS moves to note, but that's not what you're using her for. You're using her to cap stats on another unit, especially, like I said, a DPS, so that that DPS can punch through anything in its way. And you can combine it with, obviously, other combinations of teams, either to apply Barrier Pierce, or if the unit already has Barrier Pierce, then you can already apply. For example, Iphi AS applying, like stats boost to, for example, Minalca would make her even more of a monster than she is right now, or commonly with other units out there. Okay, conversely to Radius to Iphi AS, we have Radius AS. What does Radius AS do? Well, the main thing you need to know is you really only need to know one thing. She starts the battle with 3 Aegis stacks, and she can consume one of this Aegis stack to basically use a move called Chivalry, and that replaces the normal move. You can do that any 3 turns in the battle, and you essentially take nothing. Radius essentially becomes cover, absorbs all damage, kind of like a Pry on steroids. She can basically help you win the fight by allowing you to take as much damage as you want because she's the one taking it. And she doesn't die. She'll be left at 1 HP. So again, you can do it 3 chivalries in a row. You can wait until mid-fight when you need a chivalry, and then maybe wait a couple of turns after when you're setting up for the next HP stopper, and then use it that way. And as long as you time it properly, I mean, you can say, oh, I only get 3 chances. I mean, you should win the game if you already have 3 chances to not do it, not take any damage. And your other 3 units can do whatever they want. She also rages everybody, which goes really well with some of her abilities. Now, obviously, she has some debuffs. This is her 4-star move, which kind of crap. She also has the Elemental Barrier, which is 4. And of course, that's 4-star as well. But these 2 AS moves are ridiculous. Power down 30, and is stackable up to 60%, so 30, 45, and 60, which essentially helps control any physical fight. Gives the barrier to all party members that reduces damage by 70%, which is on top of any mitigation, debuffs, and shields you have. And she will also gain a HP shield. And she has a high HP count to start anyways with AS Radius. If that's not good enough, and remember, this is on top of her chivalry, she can now preemptive slash attack, and chivalry is also preemptive. Apply rage. Physical resistance 70% for herself, status immunity, and heal, and blah 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 blah. Counter heal essentially. Ridiculous, ridiculous, ridiculous. Oh, she is a slash zone setter if you even need that. But most of the people started her off on the front line to start tanking hits for you. So, obviously, hopefully that gives you the idea of my next 4 picks. Keep in mind that the pair of Radius AS and Iphi AS are a little bit more specialized for boss killing, and especially non-AF clears, being that Iphi cannot cast Faith during the AF. It has to be outside the AF. So at least turn 1 you don't do anything. You can cast Faith, and guess what? Just use Radius to tank it. So you have a setup turn, and then turn 2 you either blast it through with a non-AF single hit when you're top level DPS, or if you need another turn setup, you can use Radius again. So if you don't do a lot of boss fight clears, and I mean super boss fights, you may argue that these are probably not nearly as powerful as you would like, or not nearly as high on the ranking as you are, in which case definitely prioritize Yakumo and Minalca. However, regardless, they are still helpful in story bosses, and story bosses have gotten more difficult over time anyways. Like some of the so-called optional content, like getting AS Serene, I mean, Radius AS would have come into play, AS Iphi would come into play. Some of the final boss does have kickback, as well as massive damage, which you need a tank. I think I used Pry, but clearly you can use a better tank than that if you want to. Also, one last thing to sway you in the favor of AS Radius and AS Iphi, if you haven't already. These 2 units are the top 2 recommendations for Baki's battle tips. So if you watched any sort of live stream, or you follow the Another Eden Global channel, with every new unit, they kind of have some battle tips or suggestions as to team comps. And these two are by far the most recommended. So, there you go. So let me know in the comments below what you think of my first 5 picks. Okay, so my sixth pick is a little bit different from my friend. My friend actually does not feel that this unit is necessary at this point in the game, and I'll explain both aspects of that. He makes some good points, by the way. Alter Shion, aka Perfection. Now, before you toss him aside, I'll tell you what he's good for, and he's good for a lot of things. Preemptive Magic Zone, the only one out there that can do it with a move. Also preemptively breaks if you want that extra break. Can enhance damage with party weak point. Can weaken zone. Can do a respectable amount of damage himself. But most importantly, he has 1 insight which replaces the normal move. And it can change weaknesses to resistances and likewise other. So if you're fighting any sort of fight and the enemy is resistant, guess what? You will switch out that resistance for weakness and he will just kind of win the game for you. And then you just, use your other DPS and other units to finish the job. You've probably seen me use him in all sorts of manifest fights and so on and so forth, as well as some endgame fights. Great unit in my opinion. Now, conversely, my friend feels that Alter Shion isn't as needed nowadays. And I'll just kind of summarize in how he wants to put it. Of course, I'm putting words in his mouth, so again, to my friend, I apologize if I kind of minced the words or got it wrong. If you are using the above 5 characters, that is, ranks number 1 to 5 as your main units, there's very few reasons to use Shion. If you need a magic team specifically, then you would use Alter Shion. However, unless the fight nulls magic and nulls shade, your Iphi Yakumo combination will wipe the floor with most magic attacks. In terms of changing resistances to weakness and likewise other way, more of the recent bosses punish you for attacking weakness, and so Alter Shion loses effectiveness that way. And let's be honest, if you're using AS Radius and AS Yifa, you can boost any unit to your heart's desire, and therefore you don't need Alter Shion on that team anyways. You could keep him in the back if you kind of have some niche use to kind of change resistance and weakness, but on the toughest of tough fights, he has almost lost his role as a number 1 or number 2 pick. And just a reminder, as my previous Should You Summon, as in Star Dream picker, I believe I picked Alter Shion second. So he's dropped down a little bit. Again, 2 differing views. You can decide which one you want to go with if you believe in either of us. Okay, next on the list is going to be a general grouping. And you'll kind of see what I mean by that. So we are going with, and some of these you've seen higher on the list previously. Okay, so Alma, Orlea, and Flam. And Flam does have 2 versions, so you can either use the normal style Flam or the AS Flam depending on your specialty. And I put them in this kind of general group as a 7 pick. And the reason why is after, again, the first 5 picks, these ones are kind of supposedly to fill out your roster in uses that you need a niche use for. Because really, the first 5 units kind of cover almost all aspects of most of the fights you need. Of course, it's not a complete roster, I get that, right? But you have to remember, most of you have been playing the game for some time and have been summoning along the way. You probably have very few holes, in which case I would imagine you've already used your Star Dream on one of the previous picks I've mentioned. As an auxiliary pick, you could pick from one of these, and I'll just kind of quickly go over why these are considered lower tier, whereas before they would have been a little bit higher. Now, the main value of Alma is A, she can be on both Pierce and Magic teams. Her magic attack does pierce barrier. So again, one of the few barrier pierce units out there. And so if you don't have a Minalca, which you've already would have paid ahead of time because it's higher along in the draft, or don't have a Iphi because Iphi can give someone a one-hit barrier pierce, you have Ether Alchemia to help you do that. And yeah, you can say that Crystal's not that useful. Hey, you can Elixir Ray that and change it, or Brain Record that, and change your attack to the element that the enemy is weak to. So as long as the enemy is weak to something, it can work. If it's not weak and you're forced to use Crystal, you can change the elements in different ways. You can change it to Shade using Iphi's move, or there are other ways to change elements on the unit, as I will show you a little bit later on. So, and not only that, she's a powerhouse. Her DPS is quite heavy. The only downside to her is that you do need a one-turn setup where she's going to go into lunatic mode, where she has to kind of activate her special ability, Trance, and that's when she really gets powerful. So something to keep in mind with that. Okay, next, Orlea. Now, Orlea has fallen a little bit as well because like Alma is actually our only Crystal Zone setter, but we have not seen currently that we need any sort of Crystal Zone attacks. Likewise, Orlea is our premier Thunder Zone setter. She's not our only one. There is ESMU, but ESMU is more of a DPS and not so much of a zone setter because, unlike Orlea, Orlea has a move called Do Beneath that can deploy Thunder right off the bat on turn 1 for a 1-turn AF. Also gives type res, and you really want to use this on Thunder Tames because you can get the Alumage, which basically caps, can boost quite a bit. In Thunder, it's capped boost, power into speed up to 100%, weapon damage up as well. And of course, she has a lot of different abilities. One of the few units that has power and int minus 50. There are a few units that are a little bit better now, but certainly one of the few that are still very, very good. And that's in top of mitigating with the elemental shield here, right? She has some DPS, but her DPS is relatively low. Don't forget, she also can start everyone with extra lunatic, and also everyone has hold ground as long as she starts in the front of battle. So very, very good in that sense, but not as much as she says she's really, really good. And she will be useful if you do want a Thunder Zone kind of team. Keep in mind that, like I said, you could use the first few units to kind of take care of most business, and just using picks like this as, how should I say it, to round out your roster. So she has a lot of abilities and a lot of positives, just may not be as powerful as the previous units mentioned. And finally, we have Flam. Now, Flam used to be our consensus #1 pick. And the reason for that is she had a 0 MP farming move, she does a 3k mod, she does a ton of damage, and she has some support as well, can give everyone mental focus. Yeah, you see me use her, okay? So you know what's up already. So she can give Water Res down, she can give Baptizo Soul, she's got the 4-hit combo with Gaija Spring, which does a ton of damage, and of course, we see Neptune anytime on low turn clears, just blast away at the enemies. But, as much as that's useful, she is a great water magic DPS, but I don't know if you consider her more powerful than previous units I mentioned. I mean, if you compare elements aside, her raw ability to a Yakumo, for example, they're not even close at this point, right? So it's really difficult to say that she would be a #1 pick at this point in the game. Now, one thing about Flam that you have to consider as well, you get 2 for 1 as well. You can side grade her to AS Flam, and AS Flam does have some very beneficial abilities for magic type teams. You can give capped boost of int, speed, and weapon damage for staff users, and max MP up, which helps with mental focus, up to 100% for the first 3 turns, and it lasts for 5 turns, by the way. She has a DPS move too, and it does apply weapon break magic, will help your magic users do more damage. So again, very nice complementary piece for Magic Zone teams, or if you want to increased boost of damage of units such as, for example, magic attacks from Alma or magic attacks from Yakumo. Extremely powerful in that. But again, unfortunately, the other units kind of outshine her just a little bit, just from a strict raw power standpoint. It actually pains me to see that some of the unit has dropped a little bit over time. Now, one unit I don't have here, and I'm just going to quickly mention this, in this same tier, so along the lines of these 3 units, I would also pair either, Sesta in here as well. Sesta is also the newest unit coming out in 2 days from now, and it will be a gacha unit. Should be shared with ES Tuva. Special mention only because it'll be the newest, coolest toy out there. She has tremendous DPS potential, can awaken and start zone without doing a move, and can do 5 moves in a row, the final move of which can do a substantial amount of damage plus bypass barrier, which is very similar to Alma and some of the other units we recommended. The reason why Sesta is considered a little bit lower is that first of all, I don't have a lot of experience with Sesta, obviously, and the other units are just, again, extremely powerful. I'll say this, as powerful as Sesta is, I'm not sure I would consider her a top pick for any roster, unless you're missing very few units, in which case, why not, right? So I'll go more into Sesta specifically in a couple of days from now. But just so you know my overall ranking, I would consider Sesta around this tier below the other units mentioned. Okay, now we'll just round the last couple out. And then I'm just going to have some general thoughts about some other units, and then we'll wrap it up. Again, I apologize for the long video. It's long because there's a lot to cover, and so hopefully hopefully you're not bored. Hopefully I'm not upsetting anyone. My next tier after that, and again, these are all at this point considered late picks, because really we've already gone over almost 10 units, right? So don't think that these are bad units by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that you are going to be much more likely to pick one of the early ones than these ones. That being said, Nakoko is great. She has 2 styles, and both of them are pretty good. Normal style can do some DPS, crit setting, heal damage, and she's got some reasonable shielding with Cat Daddy Guardian front and back, as well as type up and down with Spirit Wisdom. So there are some benefits here. She has some other niche moves, but decent on its own front. Ace Nakoko is also great. Scintillating Spirit is what you're really looking for if you're wanting a unit that has these capabilities. She has the ability to boost everyone's power, int, speed, and weapon damage, and increase damage against weak points. And it changes everyone's element to the elemental zone that's active for 1 turn. Note that her animation speed is actually really slow. So if you put her in slot 2 and you start zone on turn 1, and do a 1-turn AF, you have to wait until the zone is set, and then she casts it. You wait until this animation is done before your other units change to that elemental zone. So keep in mind that is, as much as you say is not a big deal, it is a big deal. And her other 5-star move is great. In any elemental or type zone, it is power, int, and speed, and type resistance 50% down. Very great way to help control the fight, and you can either, again, use her Cat Daddy Guardian or her lesser 4-star ability to attack. Not as great, but she's not there for attack, she's more for support. And in that sense, she's unique. She can change anyone to your whole team to 1 element. However, other units can buff and debuff equal or better than her, but she's still unique as in the only unit that can change everyone to 1 element. Iphi doesn't count because she can only change it to shade. Nakoko can change it to fire, water, earth, whatever. So benefits there. On another note, RCF, aka Ultra Dewey, seen me use him. He can set zone. He extends awaken zone by 1 turn. Actually by 2 turns actually. So if it's normally 2 turns for another awakened zone, it's 4 turns with him in the front when you activate zone. And his main rise to fame, and you still need this quite a bit, Grudge Spark is the one. If it's in elemental zone, you get in awakened zone, elemental zone, you can get up to 75 up and down. And the good thing about both him as well as Nakoko, both forms, they change to the element of the elemental zone. So if you set wind zone, these will be wind attacks. If you set earth zone, these will be earth attacks. And default is fire, of course. But we are always going to use them in highly focused elemental teams. Then you use Cannon de Fer to lock in an awakened zone, which gives boosting as well and increases weak point. And then finally, you can use Raging Anger to help kind of set the game, shielding up, weapon damage up to 50% in another zone or awakened zone. So the two of them alone can be very flexible. They can adapt to all elemental teams. And so in that case, they still have to be mentioned fairly high up. And again, still used and welcome in today's meta for mostly for super boss fights. So again, if you're not a super boss fighter, you can say you don't really need them. However, they do provide a lot of flexibility for you. Okay, so again, we're just going to go back to my summarizing thoughts. I'm just going to mention a couple of things. First of all, back to AS Radius. If you did finish the first night episode, you can opt to not use your Starting there and try to summon for one form of Radius here. You do get a up to 4% chance on if you do a 10 pull of getting Radius. 0.8 for the 4.5, 1.6 for the 5, and combined odds on the 10th pull as 4%. So that way, if you have stones, you can use it this way. I know that's only a regular Radius, but many of you should have 5 Treaty Seed if you've been grinding out since last year. AS Radius has been almost a year old, so keep that in mind. Okay, so units I haven't mentioned yet, and again, just because I haven't mentioned this doesn't mean I don't care about you, I don't hate you, nothing like that. It's just, just my opinions, guys. Okay, so ES2 is coming out in 2 days. She is a great Shade Zone unit, has some buffing capabilities, respectable DPS, but not really a first round pick, because if you're just needing a Shade Zone DPS and support for offense, you already have Iphi and Yakumo. Okay, but one other mention about ES Tuva is if you do pick her and you have no form of Tuva, you can side grade to the Alter, and Alter Tuva has some benefits as well, relatively niche for super boss fights. Just quickly speaking, she is one of the few units that can apply overthrow to the enemy in order to increase your damage against it. So, and this is a Earth Zone setter as well. Now, in years past, the way we built teams was based on zone setting, then offensive support, defensive support, and DPS. Nowadays, all the lines are blurred. You have one unit that can be both offensive DPS as well as offensive support and defensive support all in one move, for example. And you can also have units that not only set zone but do a ton of other things as well. Like you can see Iphi, how many things that Iphi can do. As a general rule, I don't recommend zone setters as first type picks, other than the ones I mentioned earlier on, because for the most part, zone setters have been replaced by Grasta if you need a specific zone. You also have Aisha, which is a free unit that can set both water and fire, and you have multiple slash zone free units. I know they're not that great, but they can still be used. And realistically, like I said, if you really need certain elements, provided you don't need earth or blunt zone, all the other elements and zones can be activated through a Grasta, albeit you do have to fight some super boss fights. But guess what? If you have the first 5 units on your team, or even the next few after that, you'll probably win and beat all those and get all those Grasta anyways. How about the singers? Pizzica and AS Mystere. Now, they still have a lot of use. You can still use Pizzica to help mitigate or increase damage. You can also use AS Mystere to do the same thing, and Mystere has the additional advantage of dealing end of turn DPS, which can actually ramp up quite a bit. Also, finally, AS Pizzica is coming out in the future, so you can side grade your regular Pizzica to AS Pizzica. Again, great units, just can't beat the sheer power of the first few. Flash Strike stance users, same thing. Great niche units, you got Melissa and AS Hardy. Yeah, can't see them bypassing any of the other units up front. Now, ES Claude is an interesting one. ES Claude, I've never used him. He's got a lot of claim to fame. Crit damage for physical teams up 100%. The fact that he can flexible zone and change after kind of copying or empathy with his unit, can kind of change to their zone, and he can set zone for slash with a move. Has other abilities to boost, to help buff. So very good support, and end of turn heal for MP and HP as well. So a lot of people use him. They use it for super boss fights as well as just everyday farming. Great unit, but not sure you can, again, argue over some of the other units I mentioned. And finally, last one I'll mention, although there's tons of honorable mentions, I'll just cover the last one here. Alter his Mina. Now, Alter his Mina, I did recommend as number 4, I think, in my last Star Dream selector. Her claim to fame is she is a very flexible unit that can fit into any weapon type zone. She's default as slash, however she can change into pierce or blunt or magic depending on how many of those units are in the front line. However, one thing about her, you do need Awakened Zone to fully benefit from her DPS. Okay, so that was a very long video. Hopefully that gives you some idea, and again, let me know in the comments below what you think of my list. Agree, disagree, do you even know who you're picking yet? As for myself, I don't pick on Star Dreams, not because I don't love them, because I know who I'd be selecting. Prior. And, I'm still free to play, so I cannot partake in the Star Dream. Anyways, again, patch notes or notices should be tomorrow night, followed by the update itself in a couple of days. So, see you then. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.